So one of my probably the deepest passion for me, what I would say, maybe we kind of spoke off mic a little bit about it, but that I think is a blind spot for at least robotics and AI folks is human robot interaction, human agent interaction. Maybe do you have thoughts about how we reduce the size of that blind spot? Do you also share the feeling that not enough folks are studying this aspect of interaction?
Well, I'm actually pretty intensively interested in this issue now, and there are people in my group who've actually pivoted pretty hard over the last few years from doing more traditional cognitive psychology and cognitive neuroscience to doing experimental work on human agent interaction. Mm-hmm. And there are a couple of reasons that I'm pretty passionately interested in this. One is it's kind of the outcome of having thought for a few years now about what we're up to. Like, what are we doing? Like, what is this AI research for? So what does it mean to make the world a better place? I'm pretty sure that means making life better for humans.
Yeah.
And so how do you make life better for humans? That's a proposition that, when you look at it carefully and honestly, is rather horrendously complicated, especially when the AI systems that you're building are learning systems. You're not programming something that you then introduce to the world and it just works as programmed, like Google Maps or something. We're building systems that learn from experience. So that typically leads to AI safety questions. How do we keep these things from getting out of control? How do we keep them from doing things that harm humans? And I mean, I hasten to say, I consider those hugely important issues. And there are large sectors of the research community at DeepMind, and of course elsewhere, who are dedicated to thinking hard all day, every day about that. But there's I guess I would say a positive side to this too, which is to say, well, what would it mean to make human life better? And how can we imagine learning systems doing that? And in talking to my colleagues about that, we reached the initial conclusion that it's not sufficient to philosophize about that. You actually have to take into account how humans actually work, and what humans want, and the difficulties of knowing what humans want, and the difficulties that arise when humans want different things. And so human agent interaction has become, a quite intensive focus of my group lately. If for no other reason that, in order to really address that issue in an adequate way, you have to, psychology becomes part of the picture.
Yeah. So there's a few elements there. So if you focus on solving if you focus on the robotics problem, let's say AGI, without humans in the picture, you're missing fundamentally the final step. When you do want to help human civilization, you eventually have to interact with humans. Yeah. And when you create a learning system, just as you said, that will eventually have to interact with humans, the interaction itself has to become part of the learning process.
Right.
So you can't just watch. Well, my sense is, it sounds like your sense is, you can't just watch humans to learn about humans.
Yeah.
You have to also be part of the human world. You have to interact with humans.
Yeah, exactly. And then questions arise that start imperceptibly, but inevitably to slip beyond the realm of engineering. So questions like, if you have an agent that can do something that you can't do, under what conditions do you want that agent to do it? So, if I have a robot that can play Beethoven sonatas better than any human, in the sense that the sensitivity, the expression is just beyond what any human. Do I do I want to listen to that? Do I want to go to a concert and hear a robot play? These aren't engineering questions. These are questions about human preference and human culture. And
It's psychology bordering on philosophy.
yeah. and then you start asking, well, even if we knew the answer to that, is it our place as AI engineers to build that into these agents? Probably the agents should interact with humans beyond the population of AI engineers and figure out what those humans want.
Yes.
And then, when you start, I referred this a moment ago, but even that becomes complicated. Because what if two humans want different things, and you have only one agent that's able to interact with them and try to satisfy their preferences? Then you're into the realm of like economics and social choice theory and even politics. So there's a sense in which if you kind of follow what we're doing to its logical conclusion, then it goes beyond questions of engineering and technology and starts to shade imperceptibly into questions about what kind of society do you want. And actually that once that dawned on me, I actually felt, I don't know what the right word is, quite refreshed in my involvement in AI research. It's almost like building this kind of stuff is going to lead us back to asking really fundamental questions about what is this, like what's the good life, and who gets to decide, and bringing in viewpoints from multiple sub-communities to help us shape the way that we live. There's something, it started making me feel like doing AI research in a fully responsible way could potentially lead to a kind of like cultural renewal.
Yeah, it's the way to understand human beings at the individual, at the societal level. It may become a way to answer all the silly human questions of the meaning of life and all those kinds of things.
Even if it doesn't give us a way of answering those questions, it may force us back to thinking about them, and it might restore a certain, I don't know, a certain depth to, or even, dare I say, spirituality to the way that to the world. I don't know. Maybe that's too grandiose. But
well, I don't. I'm with you. I think it's AI will be the philosophy of the 21st century, the way which will open the door. I think a lot of AI researchers are afraid to open that door of exploring the beautiful richness of the human agent interaction, human AI interaction. I'm really happy that somebody like you have opened that door. And
one thing I often think about is, the usual schema for thinking about human agent interaction is this kind of dystopian, our robot overlords, and again, I hasten to say AI safety is hugely important, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be thinking about those risks. Totally on board for that. But having said that, what often follows for me is the thought that, there's another kind of narrative that might be relevant, which is when we think of humans gaining more and more information about, like human life, the narrative there is usually that they gain more and more wisdom, and more, they get closer to enlightenment, and and they become more benevolent, and like the Buddha is that's a totally different narrative. And why isn't it the case that we imagine that the AI systems that we're creating are just going to they're going to figure out more and more about the way the world works and the way that humans interact, and they'll become beneficent? I'm not saying that will happen. I don't honestly expect that to happen without some careful setting things up very carefully. But it's another way things could go, right? And
and I would even push back on that. I personally believe that the most trajectories, natural human trajectories, will lead us towards progress. So for me, there is a kind of sense that most trajectories in AI development will lead us into trouble. To me, and we over focus on the worst case. It's like in computer science, theoretical computer science, there's been this focus on worst case analysis. There's something appealing to our human mind at some lowest level to be. I mean, we don't want to be eaten by the tiger, I guess. So we want to do the worst case analysis. But the reality is that shouldn't stop us from actually building out all the other trajectories which are potentially leading to all the positive worlds, all the enlightenment. There's a book, Enlightenment Now, with Steven Pinker and so on. This is looking generally at human progress, and there's so many ways that human progress can happen with AI. And I think you have to do that research. You have to do that work. You have to do not just the AI safety work of the one worst case analysis. How do we prevent that? But the actual tools and the glue and the mechanisms of human AI interaction that would lead to all the positive actions that can go.
Yeah,
it's
right.
It's a super exciting area, right?
Yeah, we should be spending a lot of our time saying what can go wrong. I think it's harder to see that there's work to be done to bring into focus the question of what it would look like for things to go right.
Yeah,
it's that's not obvious. There's and we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't have the sense there was huge potential, right? We're not doing this, for no reason. We have a sense that AGI would be a major boon to humanity, but I think it's worth starting now, even when our technology is quite primitive, asking, well, exactly what would that mean? We can start now with applications that are already going to make the world a better place, like solving protein folding. I think DeepMind has gotten heavy into science applications lately, which I think is a wonderful move for us to be making. But when we think about AGI, when we think about building fully intelligent agents that are going to be able to, in a sense, do whatever they want, we should start thinking about what do we want them to want, right? What kind of world do we want to live in? That's not an easy question, and I think we just need to start working on it.
And even on the path to sort of it doesn't have to be AGI, but just intelligent agents that interact with us and help us enrich our own existence on social networks, for example, on recommender systems of various intelligent. There's so much interesting interaction that's yet to be understood and studied. And how do you create? Twitter is struggling with this very idea. How do you create AI systems that increase the quality and the health of a conversation?
For sure, yeah.
That's a beautiful, beautiful human psychology question.
And how do you do that without deception being involved, without manipulation being involved, maximizing human autonomy, and how do you make these choices in a democratic way? How do we face again, I'm speaking for myself here. Yeah, how do we face the fact that it's a small group of people who have the skill set to build these kinds of systems, but what it means to make the world a better place is something that we all have to be talking about.
Yeah, the world that we're trying to make a better place includes a huge variety of different kinds of people.
Yeah, how do we cope with that? This is a problem that has been discussed, in gory, extensive detail in social choice theory. One thing I'm really enjoying about the recent direction work has taken in some parts of my team is that, we're reading the AI literature, we're reading the neuroscience literature, but we've also started reading like economics and, as I mentioned, social choice theory, even some political theory, because it turns out that it all becomes relevant. It all becomes relevant. And, but, at the same time, we've been trying not to write philosophy papers, right? We've been trying not to write position papers. We're trying to figure out ways of doing actual empirical research that kind of take the first small steps to thinking about what it really means for humans with all of their complexity and contradiction and, paradox, to be brought into contact with these AI systems in a way that really makes the world a better place.
And often reinforcement learning frameworks actually kind of allow you to do that. machine learning, and so that's the exciting thing about AI is it allows you to reduce the unsolvable problem, philosophical problem, into something more concrete that you can get a hold of.
Yeah, and it allows you to kind of define the problem in some way that allows for growth in the system that's sort of, you're not responsible for the details, right? You say, this is generally what I want you to do, and then learning takes care of the rest. Of course, the safety issues arise in that context, but I think also some of these positive issues arise in that context. What would it mean for an AI system to really come to understand what humans want? Mm-hmm. And with all of the subtleties of that, right? Humans want help with certain things, but they don't want everything done for them, right? There is part of the satisfaction that humans get from life is in accomplishing things. So if there were devices around that did everything for, I often think of the movie WALL-E. Yeah. Right. That's like dystopian in a totally different way. It's like the machines are doing everything for us. That's not what we wanted. Yeah. Anyway, I find this, this opens up a whole landscape of research that feels affirmative and exciting.
To me, it's one of the most exciting, and it's wide open.
Yeah.